Let's get started with talking about the race. We're going to do this by talking through the teams, starting with whoever finished first. We'll talk about their team, work our way through the list here. So the winner of the Bahrain Grand Prix, Max Verstappen, followed by Sergio Perez. So let's talk about all things Red Bull this weekend. They started practice looking good, qualifying looking even a little bit better. And then come race day, it turns out they hadn't actually been trying earlier. And even still, I'm not sure that they were really trying that much to win the race. It was just that easy for them, right?
They were told to hit a certain time frame, which wasn't even close to their qualifying pace. So they had pace to spare, and they were going at a second and a lap faster than mostly everybody else in the field. So they were just conserving tires and running up by themselves.
Yeah,
I want to know
Max was in a league of his own.
Sorry, Bill.
What's up, Jeff?
They remind me of the scene in Ricky Bobby where Sacha Baron Cohen is racing Ricky Bobby, and he's so far ahead that he's sipping espresso. That's Red Bull this season.
Yeah.
Max just pulls out the can of Red Bull and just
exactly
taking a few sips there.
That's what they look like to me.
Yeah.
At one point, they turned down the engine power.
Yeah.
So like they
No,
were
that's
still
what I was
going
gonna
to
say. Like
everyone else.
They had like power in droves. They were according to the Julian Palmer analysis, he was looking at some of the data of the drivers, blah blah blah. Long story short, they were lifting and coasting the second half of the race. You would only do that if you were desperately in need of like making sure to conserve your tires or fuel, or they just had such a margin to the rest of the field. They could afford to, you know what, guys, we could already be thinking about preserving this engine before the race is even done as we're leading 1-2.
Yeah.
So if that says anything at all, it just means we might be in for another amazing long season. Let's go, baby. Come on, Red Bull.
Amazing for some of
Here
us.
We go.
Lying for others here. I mean, safe to say the season's over, right? Like
it's looking something like that. I mean, there's dominating, and then there's Red Bull.
Yeah.
Although
we're on another planet.
I will highlight our commentary at around this time last year, in which the season was also over due to Red Bull's incompetence and Ferrari dominance that we were looking at as of the first few races of last year. So I think for tradition's sake, let's call the season right at the beginning of the season and be wrong. So,
and there's that curse to think about too. So, yeah, I think it might be Ferrari's year, guys.
All signs point towards a Ferrari victory. Can someone explain the curse a little bit further?
Jeff's the curse master.
Well, as we went through it a little bit, every single winner since 2017 of the first race of the season has gone on to win or get second place in the drivers' championship. So Verstappen's doomed to fail.
Charles Leclerc.
Charles Leclerc. F1 Garage podcast with breaking news, where I think we all feel confident calling it now. Charles Leclerc will be the 2023 World Drivers' Champion.
I think so. I think so. Yeah.
Yep.
All right. Sergio Perez, I think we should highlight real quick.
Why?
You're right. Why? He was 11 seconds down from his teammate. Not a great look, but also 20 something seconds up from the next place down.
Right.
So depends on your perspective, I guess.
He's still driving by himself. So.
Yeah, I think they just wanted some clean air to do some fun laps in.
Well, good for you, Red Bull.
Yeah.
The problem with that is that Christian Horner sees that and he cares about that. So he's going to view that and put pressure on Checo because of that, which is
because
comical.
Checo wasn't within 10 seconds of Max, Daniel Ricciardo might get in.
Well, that'd be fun.
I
don't know if Daniel
so you're saying there's a chance.
Another hot take here, folks. The F1 Garage is saying that Daniel Ricciardo will get the second seat.
I wish if
Yeah.
only we could speak to Daniel Ricciardo about this right now to hear more about what he thinks on the issue.
Oi! Crikey! I'm here.
Well, thanks for joining us, Daniel Ricciardo. Tell us, how was it watching the two drivers in Red Bull? They just really pranced to the front. Do you think you have any chance of sitting in the Red Bull come the second half of the season, maybe next year?
Fuck them all.
Yeah, all right. Thank you, Daniel Ricciardo, for that inspiring tidbit on the season. All right.
We're so glad
What
you're
team
here.
is next up, Jared?
All right. So moving on down the order to a
Did that
third
work
place
well?
here.
Is that-
It
is
worked
that-
so
Is that bit gonna
It's okay.
stay in the episode? That was good. That felt good.
it was okay, but yes, it is staying.
All right, good.
All right. Moving on to third
Next week
place
where I have
in
another
the
driver.
standings, Fernando Alonso. So let's talk all things Aston Martin now.
Yes.
I guess question number
train,
one is the hype real?
train, hype.
Dylan's on the hype train.
Yeah. Oh my
He's
gosh.
already chanting.
Been talking about it the whole time. I did just put my money down on green this year, even though that's not a real thing in blackjack, but or roulette, or
Well,
what game am I playing? I don't
First
even
off,
know.
it would be roulette, and second off, that
Technically, there
wouldn't
are
be a real
two
thing.
greens
Yeah,
on roulette, so actually, okay, all right. So you're saying there's a chance? Yeah, all right.
All right. All that being said, is the hype legit?
Well, think about, we saw Lance Stroll collide into his teammate Fernando Alonso, and that actually dropped Fernando back a couple of places, like maybe one place. I think like a Mercedes got in front of him. So if they were both off to a clean start, if both their drivers didn't have broken hands, I'm just thinking about the possibilities. Now, we have talked about how Fernando is a two-time world drivers champion, but he honestly was racing at the best of his abilities. I saw some of the classiest racing from him against old teammate and rival Lewis Hamilton, but he always left space. There was never one time where he pushed a driver wide. He did kind of touch Carlos Sainz, but to the point where he backed out and said, all right, next lap, I'm going to give it a go, because he's like such a fair but competitive and aggressive racer. And it's so fun to see him in a competitive car.
He had a
It's
couple
amazing.
moves too where he did the classic Alonso bait and pass, which is
Switcheroo.
really cool.
Dude, he's thinking about making moves 6-7 corners ahead. He's just positioning in his car in his right spot, and he's just making it happen, capitalizing on every single gap and doing it with such elegance. It's so fun to see.
It seemed like
amazing.
Everything like we got so used to seeing Fernando Alonso in like 8th, 9th place last year, where he's like clogging up these massive DRS trains and stuff. And now it was like he was the antagonist, and he was like not in the way he was driving, but just like he was going after places, like with what Jeff was saying with his bait and switch moves. He was doing that to everyone. Like Lewis fell for that. I think Carlos
George
fell for that.
Carlos,
George fell for that. Like,
and maybe Charles, if he was around too. Like, who knows how far up he could have gotten with all the drivers there.
Yeah.
Oh.
So yeah, I definitely think that Aston Martin have a rocket ship, which is mind-blowing for Mercedes fans, because it's the same engine. Like Aston Martin are customers of Mercedes, and they were outpacing Mercedes. So like that means that Mercedes supplies the engine, the gearbox, and the rear axle. So that like a good portion of that Aston Martin car is a Mercedes, and they were outperforming them.
And they also use Mercedes wind tunnel to develop their own car in Aston Martin.
Awesome.
So it's not a good look for Mercedes, but like, yeah, it seemed like Aston Martin was there. So just in terms of like the development that they've done to their car, yeah, I think the hype is real, and they genuinely do have a rocket ship. I think we do need to temper ourselves still, because we almost saw a first lap collision, which could have resulted in a very bad day for Aston Martin. So I think that yes, I think they're like, we have to think about them in terms of being like a top 4 team and they deserve to be in second place in the constructors championship right now, and I think they could end up in second place at the end of the year. Who knows? But like, I think that there's going to definitely be some mad drama and some bad finishes
with this race, though. With Aston Martin performing well, it's gonna make me really want to watch the entire weekend more closely, because if these guys can consistently qualify well, it's gonna totally change how Mercedes and even Ferrari are gonna drive and their strategies.
Yeah.
Mhm.
To think that at one point, it was either Lewis or George, but they were in a position where they had to worry about an Aston Martin going for an an undercut through a strategy, and they had to hold that off because they were like, guys, we're not fighting for the top 3 teams anymore, and we're also not even sure if there is a top 3 and then a midfield and then the end of the running. So I think we should dive into the next team here to see where else the standings left us. So, but yeah, there's a lot of excitement with Aston Martin. The hype train's real. Get on board if you haven't already.
All aboard. All right, moving on to 4th place, Carlos Sainz, his teammate Charles Leclerc DNFing. So Ferrari, did anyone actually hope we'd get something from Ferrari?
Of course.
Who had hope? Tell us why. Tell us how you're disappointed now.
Well,
Okay, should we start with the engine penalties that Charles Leclerc has already taken?
Yeah,
before
you
the
say
first
that.
race of the season,
Yeah.
Charles Leclerc had to swap out 2 engine components. And mind you, they can only do that for the specific components he swapped. It was like a control
Twice.
electronics
the
unit.
whole season.
They only have 2 allocations of those for the whole season. They're already
It
one
didn't
down.
even make
So
it to race 1.
so they could be taking grid penalties well
Later
before
on in the season.
the halfway point of the season. Before that, yeah. Because they only get 2, and now he's down with 1. And on top of that, doesn't even finish the race. Does that mean there's further damage on this engine?
Well,
Could there be
it sounded
a
like they
whole
were
new
thinking
swap?
It sounds like they were thinking it was still related to that part that they were.
It is. Yeah.
Okay.
They might have
the control unit
do it again.
still was trash. So that's what the whole the big issue is their engine spot or whatever I forgot what it's called, or and then their control unit totally failed by, what was it, like,
that's too bad.
Lap 40, I believe. So he still had plenty of race left, and that's why he was so disappointed, along with myself, just because I really want Chucky to win.
Chucky,
seriously.
Carlos Sainz, I'd say rather anonymous, but okay race. You would expect him to be in front of the Aston Martin, but 4th place, not something to be disappointed in.
Very similar to how we thought about Sergio Perez, if I'm being honest. Like, wasn't quite the best of his team, but also wasn't too far off the pace either. Looks like he has room to grow. I still feel like we have another race or 2 left in Carlos Sainz that he still might win, but if it comes down to team battles between him and Charles, though, man, it's hard to say, because he's clearly the number 1 driver at this stage of the season. And if he does well for the next couple of races, it could turn into a Carlos is being directed into getting more, podium finishes, and it'd be really interesting to see if the dynamic changes at Ferrari. New team boss, who knows? Who knows?
Well, yeah, I was gonna say they still are very optimistic over there, and think that it's more of like a setup issue than a pace issue. Like, they feel like they were on Red Bull's pace this weekend, which I don't necessarily agree with, but
good for you. But
yeah
it's kind of like they have to say that.
And obviously they have to be optimistic still, but if it really is a thing of them having the setup wrong this weekend, that's another Ferrari technical mistake that we're seeing. So new regime, same old Ferrari, it seems. So it wasn't all strategy problems last year.
Well, so like I was again hopeful, because Charles Leclerc, granted 2 DNFs by Red Bull, but Charles won the race last year, fastest lap. Like, he ran across the board in Bahrain last year. So very hopeful, but no, alas.
Alas.
All right.
Let's move on down to fifth place. And with that, it was Lewis Hamilton. His teammate George Russell was in seventh. So Mercedes,
No hope.
no hope.
This is a team with no hope.
Yeah.
Even if you ask Toto Wolff, he would say the same thing. No hope.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's going to be a long year. George Russell said that he expects that Red Bull are going to win every race. So that's the general tone over at Mercedes these days.
Really encouraging.
Yeah. As far as the race itself, they just were off. Like they were so far back, and even in qualifying, like they were that far back. Like they were 7/10 off in qualifying, which I think is about where they were last year in qualifying. So yes, they might have brought some upgrades that increased their speed, but every other team did too, apparently. And so they're going to have to reevaluate their decision making and their whatever they've got going on over there.
Yeah. Well, at
So,
least
Ted, do you think it's time for Plan B?
I mean, it might be, but that might also have to be something that waits for next year too. I know they have some packages that they're still planning on bringing this year, but they've admitted that the zero pods suck, and they're going to be bringing side pods at some point.
Might be a scrap year, honestly. They might just go for the extra wind tunnel time to finish in fourth this season and really get a leg up for next year. But that's kind of the Ferrari mentality of next year's our year. Yeah.
Do you already start thinking that way though? One race in, and
they
you start
kind of
going,
did last year too, within a few races.
The difference was, I think Lewis Hamilton after the first weekend said he was still optimistic and thought that they would be competitive, able to win a race, and they did win a race by the end of last year. Now they're not saying that. So
well, that's funny you say that. So a highlight from Mercedes is Lewis was interviewed at the end. He's like, "How do you think you did today, Lewis?" That type of question. He's like, "Well, it was a fun race. I thought I raced well, but I just wasn't fast enough." And you just listen to that, and he's all smiles, and you're like, "Okay, so this is Lewis's vibe right now. Like he's just the old best driver in the world, just having fun, and he just wants to do his best."
Getting $40 million a year, getting a fifth place finish. What's so wrong about that? You know?
Yeah.
So I guess there are two worrying things there. So it's either like maybe they are just aware of their situations and they're gonna live in it. But it's also like I like what Toto was saying after the race, where Toto was like, yeah, this isn't acceptable. We're miles off. We have to reorient ourselves because it's not about making this decision. It's about getting on the right plan going forward so that we don't have to make more decisions later like this. So like what he was saying seemed relatively good, but like I don't want there to be like a defeatist attitude or like for them to be okay with it, really is what I'm thinking. Like I don't want them to be okay with where they're at right now.
All right, let's move on from that sadness to some maybe a little less sadness. Valtteri Bottas finished in 8th place with Alfa Romeo. His teammate Zhou Guanyu finished in 16th. Not much to be proud of there. But I would say from Valtteri's perspective, it's about as good as you hope for an Alfa Romeo. Did anyone
does that
see
car look good?
any Alfa Romeos? Yeah.
Well, we saw for a split second, there was a point when the Alfa Romeo Valtteri made a strategic move to pit early on the hard tires, and he popped out in front of like Alonso at one point. So the team were making great strategy calls. They're making the moves. Maybe they just lacked the actual pace that we now know Aston Martin has and Mercedes too. So, but they seem to be one race in, potentially the best of the rest, leading that midfield pack. Zhou Guanyu was hanging on to that 11th, 12th spot, mind you. He pitted to get the fastest lap, which dropped him down to 16th. So he was within, I think, 10 seconds of getting that 10th place position. But the team decided to steal that from their rivals, AlphaTauri, which seemed to be doing well. They're also hanging on right behind the point spots. So that could be a good team battle for, I think, what, 5th and 6th place this year. So be exciting to see what they do. And yeah, good job for Joe getting a fastest lap, in his second ever season. Like, that's
I'm
impressive.
sure you
That's
feel
cool.
that way, getting the point for that.
Yeah, for sure.
Alpha did start strong last year though too, and then teetered off mightily by the end. So hopefully they figure out a way to keep the car competitive throughout the year this year.
Yeah, if they just have a competitive, reliable car and not pull an Alpine of last year and just fade away after good scoring points. And although Alpine ended up 4th with 8 DNFs across the border there. Anyway, be exciting to see the reliability factors this season. Maybe they'll be a lot more reliable and just secure a couple points finishes more than the next team, which might not be reliable. So we'll see.
Well,
still early.
The good news for Alfa Romeo is they have the Ferrari powertrain in the back, which is a proven reliable. Wait, never mind.
Oh yeah.
All right, moving
Scratch
on. Yeah, next on the grid, Pierre Gasly was in 9th place. Esteban Ocon DNFing at 18th. Alpine, really a tale of two stories between both qualifying and the race. Esteban qualified all right, Pierre Gasly terribly, and then during race day, exactly the opposite. Pierre Gasly worked his way up from 20th all the way up to 9th place. That is a race to be proud of. Esteban Ocon, however, got a penalty about every 5 minutes of the race.
So it started with
a penalty,
lining up wrong at his grid box. Mind
didn't
you,
even take 5 minutes.
It was the matter of like centimeters, like millimeters. Like they really, I think, made an example of him. I don't think I was looking at just how far away he was.
Parked in it.
Yeah, why even worry about that? So then he goes to serve his time penalty for anyone who didn't see what happened. And what you're supposed to do is go into your pit. The team's supposed to wait the time, then work on the car. What do the team do? They immediately work on the car. So then he gets a 10-second penalty for not serving his first time penalty. And then what does he do to come back in to serve his originally first time penalty? He speeds into the pit lane, giving him another 5-second time penalty. The dude just could not catch a break.
Esteban.
And I don't know if they just retired his car because he was like 45 seconds out of the pace, or they were just like, let's just save this engine. It's not going anywhere.
Get out of here.
Yeah. Meanwhile, he was still running in front of Lando Norris almost the entire time, which is like
rough.
It
seemed like Esteban was starting to just drive angry and frustrated by the end.
Yeah,
which
honestly,
mistakes.
It's a very penalty-prone team at this point. Like they've got Pierre Gasly, who's at the brim in terms of his license points. I think he has 10 license points, and he got a speeding violation, pit lane speeding violation in one of the practice sessions, where Alpine got $100 fine, €100 fine, excuse me, and so that on top of the way that Ocon was driving and some of the penalties he served, I wonder how much that's going to play into their season as they go along. Because Gasly will get a ban if he gets 2 more points. If he gets 12, then he gets banned. And the points that he's accrued don't start dropping off until the 6th or 7th race of the year. So there's going to be
good behavior for a long time.
Yeah. So
they just might play it safe.
They're going to have to. They're going to have to. Yeah. Which will be really interesting if they have to do it that way, where they play it safe and have to drive safe. Are they going to score a lot of points over these next 6-7 races? Are they going to have to score points later? What's happening?
You might find out that finishing the races is conducive to a winning season. So maybe the playing it safe will work.
There's something to it. Yeah.
I love that the FIA fined this $1 billion organization €100. Like that was one of you said it earlier. Do you think they just wanted the lunch?
Yeah.
They were just like,
they're just like, hey guys, lunch is on.
Lunch is on.
Lunch is on Pierre Gasly this week, guys. Here you go.
Where do we think Alpine is? Are they better than this race showed, or did this race show us where they truly are?
I think they're better. I think, I think that they are still probably the best of the rest team in the midfield. If we're including Aston Martin in the upper tier,
The top 4 now. Yeah.
yeah, then I think that Alpine are probably the 5th best team. Still, I think it's a long season, and this was just not a good weekend for them. They definitely didn't have as bad of a weekend as some other teams did. So
That's true too. Yep.
All right,
Yeah. I mean, if Pierre Gasly can cut through the pack, imagine if he starts in 6th or 7th. So
yeah, well,
yeah.
better cars up there.
All right, let's
sorry, I have to say
talk-
8th or 9th now for best of the rest. That's so weird.
Yeah.
Sorry.
All right. So we talked about a team that really underperformed for where we thought they would be. Let's talk about a team that really, I'd say, overperformed for where we thought they'd be. Alex Albon and the Williams, first race of the year, already getting 10th place.
Wow.
This is huge news for the Williams team.
Well, then
They've
his
been
teammate too.
so proud of it. And rookie Logan Sargent, 12th place. He was the
Yeah.
best performing rookie. I
Yep.
think all of us thought he would be the worst.
USA.
Guaranteed 20th, maybe for half the season.
I
No, but
think my wild card prediction is that Logan would outperform Piastri, and he certainly did.
Good start.
we'll get to Piastri. But can you guys guess the last time Williams scored in the first race of the season?
1968.
That's got to be like 2015 or 16.
Yeah.
Pedro de la Rosa in 2017
Ah,
scored in the
Oh.
Australian Grand Prix for Williams. So what, 5 years since Williams has even been a top 5 team for
Yeah.
wow. It's
Man,
so
this
good
year-
to see them taking strides back to the front. I'm really happy for that organization. They've clearly funneled a lot more money into it since they went, I think, public in a sense, not like a private Williams organization. Now they have a lot of money flowing in. So
some
good for
bank
them.
backing.
Yeah, and like in past years, we'd have been excited to see Williams score a point in the season. Now I've got one in race 1. I hope this is just a sign of things to come and not a
which
a
means
quick fluke.
if Albon can do it, so can Sargent, and that means Sargent to get points in his first year. I'd love that. I think we all would.
I think we all would.
All right, moving on to 11th place, Yuki Tsunoda with AlphaTauri. His teammate Nick DeVries finished in 14th place. Were they on the TV at all?
barely.
Yeah, I think
Probably at the
Yuki at
start.
one point made a pass on. I think it was Joe and DeVries. They were having a nice like 3-way battle. All of 10 seconds on coverage, and then that's about it. Yeah.
Well, think
That's
about
about
it
it.
too, Jared. Like they didn't even show Gasly going from P20 to 9.
They didn't
That's a
even
good point.
show Max Verstappen winning. I think they
Right.
showed him at the start
Well,
and
that-
at the finish, if I'm being honest. So
Yeah.
No one wants to just watch a guy drive around for 2
No.
hours.
Yeah.
So. All
honestly,
right. Moving on from AlphaTauri, sorry for the short bit there. Let's talk Haas. Kevin Magnussen finished in 13th. Nico Hülkenberg finished in 15th. After what was a really good qualifying for him. What happened?
he took some damage on the very first lap. There
Okay.
was some front wing damage, and it basically ruined his race from there, because I remember even classic Haas strategy to put the only car on the field on hard tires was Kevin Magnussen. So he was like kind of down towards the end. Hulkenberg, who started really well, got front wing damage, had to get replaced. And then they were just struggling, buried in a DRS train for pretty much the whole race. That's all I have for him. So, but yeah, who's to say there's not more pace in there? Maybe if they start well. But I just don't want to see a Haas like typical start strong and just dwindle away as the season goes on. I hope they
Yeah.
bring consistent upgrades like we've been talking about. They've got a lot more money for the team.
Right.
Let's hope they can make changes for this year.
They just got to
It'll be a
stay
new
steady.
thing if they can. But
Yeah. They just got to stay steady and finish races. If they're qualifying and starting in like P12, P13 range, you figure some teams up ahead will make some mistakes or some DNFs and they can get some points that way. I think they've got 2 veteran drivers that they're going to be around, so they just need to be in those positions. But they
Yeah,
did qualify well this weekend.
They
So-
qualified well, but I think this really shows the disparity between their qualifying pace and their race pace as well.
Definitely.
I think it's one thing to put in a fast lap. It's another thing to be able to consistently put in fast laps.
Yeah. Which I wonder if that's a thing of the Ferrari engine, because that's something that happens with Team Ferrari as well. Their great qualifying pace and their race pace suffers. So who knows?
I hope you're wrong,
Me too.
but we'll see.
We'll see.
All right, let's talk about what I can't believe to be the last team we're talking about here. Lando Norris finished 2 laps down. It was the last to finish in 17th place, and Oscar Piastri, first driver to DNF. What has happened to McLaren?
So Williams 2.0, right? It's not even
yeah.
McLaren anymore.
Orange is the new blue. Am I right? Yeah.
So I wonder if it's even a thought with Piastri of being like, you know what, I could have been at Williams. And now
Could have been an Alpine.
Could have been an Alpine.
now I'm basically at a Williams in orange.
Oscar, you picked the worst team, man. Like you burned bridges to join the worst team.
That was one of
Yeah.
the crazier DNFs I think I've ever seen, where it was a complete mystery. We had no idea what was going on.
Coverage just
Coming-
stopped trying.
Coming
They're
right
like,
in,
I
it
don't
was
know, man.
silent. His
And
steering wheel was making
we-
like police siren
We
like
haven't
lights and stuff. It was weird.
we haven't mentioned this yet, but we were able to watch the race all together for the first time ever
Mhm.
this weekend.
Oh yeah.
But I do remember like all of us just sitting there and watching it and counting the timer continued to run for his pit stop, and it was like
yeah.
40 seconds, 50 seconds, and we were like,
And I was like,
when
is
are
he
they
going to
gonna
break
drop
Lewis
him?
Hamilton's
Yeah.
record? This is insane. He's going to break a minute. Like,
Yeah,
this
we
is
were like,
awesome.
maybe
and
it
then
takes
like
that long for the
6 other
steering
people
wheel to boot
pitted.
back up. Like,
Well, and then the graphic comes on and it says out, not DNF or retired.
Yeah,
or anything.
yeah.
It's just like, what does out mean? Is he out of the car? Is he running now?
Is he heading out of the pits? Is he on an
Yeah.
out lap? Like, they
Yeah.
already have designations for the word out. It just
Yeah.
doesn't make sense why DNF isn't clear cut already. Like,
yeah,
is it that hard to get acronyms, people?
yeah.
I don't know.
So
IDK. Yeah.
his steering wheel just wasn't working. They tried to replace it, and the next one just never booted up. It seemed
Right.
like, right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Correct.
Like, do you
yeah.
think like they had like the AOL dial tone like
Yeah, it's
happening
like
while
Yeah.
overfloating?
they needed
Control,
an update.
delete,
Yeah.
just plug and
Zach Brown
unplug,
was in
man.
the
I don't know,
background.
dude. Yeah.
Zach Brown was on the phone already, and so Oscar's
Also,
yelling, "Get off the phone!"
It's also a shocking strategy, and I can't believe it didn't work. That they pitted Lando 6 times.
Right. So
surprised that
funny
didn't work.
thing- The funny
Yeah,
thing
weird.
with
Yeah.
funny
Do
thing
we
with
know?
that was that
Yeah.
they were I've heard a lot of commentary saying that like McLaren, since they've gotten it so wrong and they're so far behind, that they're going to be treating races as
Like
if they're
like
testing
data?
sessions.
Yeah, they're just getting
So,
data.
like,
This is
They were bringing
Haas
in-
2020 all over again.
They kept bringing in Lando to change things so that he could go out and do laps and they could collect data on it
They're just swapping out front
in the middle of a
wings, like,
live
we got-
Grand Prix. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, it's embarrassing, but part of me is like, good for you for just like, you suck. Like, just own it and try and get better. Like, almost respect.
But Jared,
Yeah.
the problem with that is there's no better way to get rid of a really good driver than to do that kind of shit.
Mm. Well, they've
Yeah.
got him for what, 9 more years?
Lando's
Was
on
it?
another
Right.
18-year contract.
Yeah.
Made a
Piastri's, I think, a multi-year contract for Piastri. So, but like, honestly, the dudes are Lando's making upwards of maybe $15 million. Kid's
And he's-
23.
Yeah, he's still a
He's
child.
got time. He's got time.
So.
Piastri,
And-
Well,
he's got time. Yeah.
time,
So
time might be there, but I mean, you drive like how you feel. So if he's sad and angry, he's not going to
yeah,
drive well.
but like
Mm.
sponsors on McLaren are going to start pulling out if they're going to be finishing in
Yeah.
Oh, that's
outside the
true,
points.
yeah.
So
right.
And he may have some broken wrists next week if he keeps punching walls. So
yeah,
we'll
Right.
see.
and all of a sudden be performing way better, perhaps.
That's all that
that
everybody
might
needs.
be what it takes. Yeah.
All right, guys. I think that sums up the race for us. There, we've decided Red Bull's dominant. Aston
Mhm.
Martin's a fun surprise, and McLaren is pathetic.
Yeah.
Anything I missed?
I
Ferrari's
think
still Ferrari.
I think that sums up
Yeah.
our race
That's
recap.
about right.
All right, moving
No, I'm so eager
into
to see how much changes between now and the halfway point and at the end of the season.
I
We're gonna look
can't
back
wait
and
for
laugh about this episode so
Yeah.
much. McLaren's gonna
because
finish P2.
McLaren's going to be leading the championship. Yeah,
And
Max
Ferrari
Mercedes
will
is gonna
have been
win it
replaced by
all.
Ricardo.
Yeah.
Ferrari actually will be in first place, and we'll be like,
Yeah.
"Oh, we called it." Obviously joking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, so switching into our talking points, bringing it back into the Red Bull dominance. It like I think Jared made a joke in our group chat earlier, like what's more likely, Max Verstappen to win 22 of the races or for George to win the World Drivers' Championship. And it is that Max will win 22 races this year.
Yeah.
Like legitimately, nice yawn, Jeff.
Away from the mic.
That was real slick.
Yeah.
But
I think the only reason Max doesn't win a race this year is car problems.
yeah,
Or maybe you
Yeah.
have an odd rain race. Even
Mm.
then, he's great in the rain. So like,
And that's kind of how it was last year,
And
dude.
he's
He had
also great
problems in
from P20.
Silverstone and
yeah,
yeah. So
you could start him in the pit lane every
Yeah.
week, and he's still
Yeah.
going to win the race.
So I have this working theory with athletes where like even the great ones, if you look at their career, like the ones that are great for long periods of time, there's probably a year and a half window where they were like truly dominant, but it was like that where they were out of this world dominant would have only been like a year or two. Like it's just this short window, but they have a ton of sustained success. I think we're in that window with Max where it's like this is his absolute dominant era. Like I think a lot of F1 driving comes down to what car you're in, but there's like talent level that goes with it, and I think that Max's talent level right now is just out of this world. Like I think it's fairly safe to say that they won't have reliability issues, which will be the only thing that puts a team in their range this year. So the discussion
let's just
be,
hope they keep eating out every day and catering, right?
yeah,
Because
break some more cost cap rules. But yeah, that I guess that poses the question of what's second, third, and fourth going to look like. Is that going to be our storyline this year? Is who are the next best teams? So yeah, I don't know.
I would have been so confident telling you at the beginning of this season that it would be Ferrari, Mercedes, Alpine, and I'm not sure about any of that now. This first race flipped everything over on its head, and I don't know. I don't know what the order is.
And I mean, as of right now, it's Aston Martin in second place. Like they're a great car. Like so yeah, it could easily be them. Mercedes look like they're the fourth place team, and that they don't know what they're doing. They have no idea what their car design is going to look like in the future.
At the end of the day, we know Mercedes has a reliable car. They've always had reliable engines. They rarely, if ever, DNF. So if they at least go another race this season, or if they go this season again, racing on attrition alone, they will make it probably without DNFing, unless it's a crash from Fernando Alonso in one of the first laps. So, and honestly, if that's their aim, they could do better than Ferrari just on merit, just for the sake of reliability. But it would be really cool to see Ferrari and Mercedes battling for third and fourth.
Oh
so
don't even talk about it.
One silver lining for Mercedes is that their former technical director James Allison might be back in the picture. He had a similar path to what Adrian Newey had, where after Red Bull's dominance with Sebastian Vettel, Adrian Newey left the team and went on to go design boats, and that was what James Allison did as well. Went off to go design boats, and now there are rumors nothing's been confirmed that he might be coming back into the picture to help with some of the designs. So
Toto raised the bat signal in the sky.
Yeah.
yes, which is something they really need, because I like something like that I often think about is how many of the Mercedes staff have been poached by Aston Martin and Red Bull over the last several years, where it's like, do they have any good employees over there? Like, do they have anyone other than Toto that knows what's going on? Even Toto doesn't seem to know what's going on.
Or to be
Yeah.
trusted.
You're right.
So a point a friend of mine made is, does Mercedes just not know how to be resourceful with making a car on a budget? Because dominated from all of the overspending. Anytime, all of the years that they could just spend whatever they wanted, they won, and they're totally dominant. As soon as this budget comes in, they're struggling to make a competitive car. And so maybe it's just that they started on a back foot and they're having trouble getting back. But now that it's 2 years now that they've been on a budget and can't get the car, the way he put it is, probably in the past they probably made plan A and plan B at the shop and then just decided which one was faster and stuck with that. Now they have to pick a car and commit to a car, and then they're stuck with a bad car potentially. Problems that they probably didn't have to plan for before.
And to build off of that, George Russell came from the most budgeted team ever, Williams.
Yeah.
All right. And he was getting great results from a team that had to work within a certain frame of money. Joins Mercedes the first year they start working inside of a budget, and he does better than his teammate Lewis Hamilton. So either Lewis is just used to unrestricted access to the finest caliber of all the, simulations and testings and all this stuff, and finally they're in a budget. They can't give Lewis what he's asking for, but George is like, this works fine for me. I'm used to this. So
it's got 4 wheels. I'm good.
Yeah.
No, those are all good points. So we'll see with them, I guess. But
I think before we move on from this point,
okay,
everyone needs to put in their guesses. Who's going to be in second, third, and fourth? We're going to name it now and see who's right and who's wrong.
I think it'll finish Ferrari, Aston, Mercedes. I think due to the curse, Ferrari is not showing how they truly are yet. It's the first race. I think Aston got really lucky with Charles's DNF, but I think there's more in store for them. Can't say the same about Mercedes. They might be writing this year off early.
Yeah.
It's hard to say. It is still very early, but on the trajectory that Aston Martin is with 2 fully capable drivers, they are a force to be reckoned with this year, or so it seems. One race, guys. Yeah.
I would probably say that as well. For like way too early to call, but Ferrari, Aston Martin, and Mercedes in that order. The one caveat I'll give is I don't know what Mercedes are going to do yet in terms of bringing upgrades and packages to this car. I know they have something planned for Baku, which has now been pushed back to Imola. So they're going to be waiting to push upgrades until we go to the Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix. But depending on what they do, they may scrap it this year and be like, we're going to focus everything we have into next year's car, into the redesign with the side pods, and try to be competitive next year.
What if that's all it took? What if all they have to do is slap side pods on and then they're winning races again?
And the problem is solved.
Yeah,
like Toto would be
happy, but
removed in a second if if that turned out to be the case. Like they're just.
Well, he's also the man in charge.
Can't
so
be removed when you own the team. But
put Susie Wolf in. Come on, let's do it.
Yeah.
I would say that I do think Ferrari looked terrible, but is still going to be the fastest car. And then I think the fastest car out of these 3, taking Red Bull out of the equation. The change I'll make is I actually do think Mercedes will finish above Aston Martin. Aston Martin looks really good. I don't think Mercedes is going to call it in yet. I think they're going to work to develop this car, and we'll get to a place where they're a similarly fast car to Aston Martin, which then leads you to which driver pairing, and which team do you think is more capable of winning a race? And I think Mercedes has the best driver pairing out there. So that's makes me go, I got to give it to Mercedes.
So I think Fernando in the Aston Martin is probably a better option than either driver in the Mercedes, but I also rate both drivers in the Mercedes ahead of Lance Stroll. I'll
Right.
put it that
I
way.
would say Fernando and Lewis
Yes.
are close.
That's a
But
smart thing
both
to
are
say,
miles
Ted.
ahead of Lance.
Yeah.
Jeff,
All
who's
right.
your 2, 3, 4?
2, 3, 4.
Yeah.
Ferrari, McLaren, Williams.
Big twist.
I'll probably stick with that too. I mean, yeah, Mercedes. So Ferrari, Mercedes,
Aston.
and Aston. I mean, but I don't like that either because, I mean, Alpine can obviously. We saw it last year. I mean, I don't think it's correct to just assume Aston Martin, even though they looked great. I mean, keep in mind too, it's like the obvious. It's Aston Martin with a legendary driver, so that definitely helps and bumps up their hype and
Yep.
the kind of the talk of how good they are. So I don't want to just say that because he had a good race and he's happy. So
He is happy though.
yeah. So I mean, probably do. I'll mix it up and I'll say that Alpine will probably take out
Sneak
that
back in the
fourth,
fight.
that fourth spot.
I don't think that's that crazy. I
No.
could see it happening. That will either seem like a very smart call or a total dream in 3 races from now, but I look forward to finding out what it was.
I agree. Some interesting potential, I guess, with some after the first week, I guess. With everything that's happening at McLaren, with Charles Leclerc having the same issues as he's had last year with Ferrari, with a car at Aston Martin, and with doubts that we have with Lance Stroll, even though what Lance Stroll did this weekend with his broken wrists and coming back from injuries to get the places that he got, I think that was super honestly super courageous in a way. I don't want to go that far, but if we give him a lot of shit, I think we have to give him some praise as well. But obviously he's not, like, none of us rate him as that high level driver. Do we think that there's room there, or do you think that's a coveted seat for a person like Lando Norris or maybe even Charles Leclerc if they're not getting what they want with their teams and that team looks pretty good and could be the second fastest car on the grid?
I think that if Lando Norris wants a seat at Aston Martin, he's going to have to wait for Fernando Alonso to give it up, because I don't think Lance Stroll is ever losing that seat until he's done with it. Because I think Lawrence Stroll, therefore Aston Martin leadership, think Lance Stroll is a good enough driver to win with the right car. I do think he's maybe a little bit underrated for what people give him credit for. I don't think he's a championship winning driver. Granted, he did win F3, but I think they really do still, like, I don't think they think they're lying to themselves. I think they believe that Lance Stroll is good enough for that. So no, I don't think there's going to be an open seat unless Fernando Alonso leaves the team.
So Lawrence Stroll is also a pretty brutal guy, captain of the company, the CEO. So he's, I mean, if there is a problem, he's getting rid of people so that the team succeeds. So like you said, Jared, I don't think that Lance Stroll will get that X.
It's a business at the end of the day, but can I just ask, do we think it was a wise decision to put Lance Stroll in that seat at all to begin with? What if something happened during the race? What if he further injured his wrists? Are those chances that Aston Martin is willing to take? Or maybe that's just added pressure knowing that his dad runs the company and he wanted to do anything he could to make his father proud? Because why not? You know, of course, that's like a heartwarming story, but is that even more dangerous? Like, just to be put in that position when they have a Formula 2 champion in perfectly capable position, ready to go, who went through preseason testing, who was sitting right there ready. But, you know,
I think it's more about Lance being like nervous about that seat. Like I don't know that like maybe he thinks that his dad might make the pragmatic decision about that seat. Like there's been jokes about bringing Vettel back, or the fact that Felipe Drugovich is a very talented young driver that's in the academy, or within the program anyway. So yeah, there's a couple options to replace him if he's not. So maybe he thinks that he needed to be in there, or maybe they think that they're going to be scoring a lot of points and in some fights where every point matters, and Lance felt like he needed to get in that seat. I think it was more about like his want, and because his dad owns the company, nobody was going to say no.
True.
So
I also think that he is putting pressure. He put pressure on himself specifically this weekend, because of Alonso. I mean, imagine he bows out and Dragovich comes in, and then he does poorly, and Alonso gets pissed at Lance and is like, "Hey, why didn't you man up? And the doctor said you can race, so why didn't you race?" Or if Dragovich does very well, like Ted, you said, like he has reasons to be nervous about his seat there. So I think it's more on like his pressure towards and relationship with Alonso.
Yeah, I agree with you guys. I think Lance probably wanted to be in the car himself. I think that's probably a personal decision with the team's consulting. I don't think he should have, that it was the right decision though. I think it was dangerous. He very clearly was struggling at multiple points throughout the race weekend to do simple things like turn the wheel,
turn the wheel at all.
There was rumors that he had failed the test of getting out of the car on time, replacing the steering wheel. Like these are all things that are endangering him and other drivers. And
just to recap, that test is a 12-second window. You have to unbuckle your seatbelt, get out of the car, replace the steering wheel in 12 seconds. Seems like a lengthy enough amount of time, but if you're 60 laps into a race and your hands and wrists are sore and then a fire erupts and you can't get out on time, it's purely just a safety reason. I think safety would trump that, because if he can race 21 of the 23 races, take some time to recover instead of getting further injured potentially earlier on. So I definitely think it was great to see him racing and show the capabilities of Aston. And I still think that team has a lot of room to grow, and be exciting to see where they take off. But if Stroll, for whatever reason, broke, his face too, and both the wrists have been gone, who would be the best pick to fit that second seat? An F2 driver, or maybe a driver we haven't seen in a while, like Giovinazzi comes back into the mix, or Daniel Ricciardo. Be fun to speculate, but
for now it's Stroll, I guess. For now it's just Stroll.
Ugh, right.
Speaking of more dangerous things that the F1 loves to do, that new car podium that
what the hell is that? That was crazy.
It was super nice.
I'm so glad you're bringing this
very
up.
Cool. And I'm glad they spent $1 million.
It did not look cool. It looked weird, and no. I hope.
So what was that? It was like an LED screen, maybe a foot off the ground, and Max had to go from a 90-degree angle to turn in, and it looked like he was scraping the bottom of his car the entire time he did it. And then what happened? He got to the point where his wheels hit the ramp.
It wasn't a full ramp either. It was like wheel track ramps. So there were two different wheel tracks that were leading up to the podium. So like as soon as he tried going up there and his back wheels got on there, he touched the throttle barely, and then both of the ramps
shot out,
flying out behind him, and he ended up making it on the podium, which was good. But if there's a group of people there, they're getting blitzed.
That's an ankle breaker.
So they're gonna have to do something about that.
I suspect Bahrain will be updating the ramp ahead of next year's Bahrain Grand Prix,
and the Grand Prix to come should also follow suit. But fun.
Just build a rising ramp that goes right into the podium. That's just a proven winning method. I think that's in Brazil. It's the coolest one.
Mexico, super simple.
Or Mexico. That's right.
Yeah. that works great. That's time tested and proven. But a simple ramp. We can do an elevator. We can't do a ramp though.
Yeah.
That whole
Drive cars at
celebration
200
was-
miles an hour around a turn. Can't do a ramp.
Man, that bugged me. The whole celebration thing of the race bugged me. They had to have spent $10 million on fireworks.
That lasted like 45 minutes.
Yeah.
Like the race ended, Max crossed. Fireworks didn't finish until all the podium ceremonies were over, and then finally they were doing some wrap ups, and then they had a grand finale. At what point do you just say, okay, that's probably enough,
Yeah. That's probably enough, guys. We're keeping the children awake. The children of Bahrain.
Episode
I can't
name
wait
right
for them to
there.
do that during the Vegas Grand Prix, which starts at midnight.
Yeah.
That gets off at 2:30, 2 a.m, all the fireworks starting then. Whew.
Luckily, children
That'd be
aren't
fun.
allowed in Las Vegas.
Mhm.
All right, guys. Anything else to add for talking points before we head to our break?
I just loved watching the race with you guys. That was a lot of fun.
That was,
was
a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was fun.
Yeah. You
It'll
should have
never
seen
happen
the
again,
first
but,
corner, the
it was
first
fun.
lap. Someone stood up, and then the rest of us stood up, and then we're all just grabbing each other by the shirt, and then just things were being thrown and torn, and then
And then we sat down for the rest of the race.
and then we
Yeah,
were like,
and-
all right, that was cool. Yeah.
Watch Max run away with it.
Yeah.
And then we played F1 on the PlayStation. Didn't even watch the race.
Seriously.
Just like real life.
All right, guys. We'll be right back.
All right, we are back with another spotlight segment. Now, last season we were talking about the teams. This season we will be talking about the drivers themselves. And like the teams last year, we feel it's important to go through them so that you guys can learn about them just as much as we are and become fans of many drivers, one driver, or none of them, right? So
Exactly. We'll leave
today-
that decision
yeah.
to you guys, but
Yes. So we're gonna go through these much quicker than we did the team spotlights, but alas, we are going through all of the drivers. So we are doing Team Williams today. So Dylan, why don't you start with Albon?
For sure. And luckily, unlike Williams, which has like 1,000 years of history, this guy's only like 24. So this
Yeah.
should be pretty quick. He's a Thai British racing driver. So he's got split parents there. Started off racing karts when he was 8 years old. Oh, imagine that. I was like just learning how to ride a bike at 8 years old, I'm pretty sure. Maybe 9. But yeah. And then a really cool feat he had for the next 5 years after he started was he never left the top 3 for any championship that he entered in, which is he was racing against the likes of Charles Leclerc, George Russell, Max Verstappen even at a couple times. But yeah, that's insane. He starts his single-seater career in 2012, and just a mere 5 years later, he's already up into Formula 2. So he went through the routes just like most drivers, starting in the Formula Renaults, the Formula 3s. Well, it was called the GP3 back then, and then it changed over to Formula 2 by the time he got there in 2018, finishing 3rd overall. I mean, pretty good. 3 pole positions, 4 wins. Not too bad. Made his Formula 1 debut just the next year. In his very first year, driving for Toro Rosso, he gets a driver switch to move up to Red Bull. Halfway through his first season, he replaced Pierre Gasly, who wasn't performing well. And he had to answer and ask a lot of questions as to why did he leave, and to figure that out. Well, he made it one more season through 2020 before he himself got tapped to, take a seat down because he just wasn't meeting their expectations. They're brutal at Red Bull. I mean, if you're not making podiums at minimum, then you're not going to make the cut.
Was he an academy driver there or anything? Do you know? Like, why would he go to, or just because he's on the kind of the board of
he
extra
was
drivers? Maybe? I
actually
don't know.
he was signed up to do another season in Formula 2. He wasn't even sure he was going to make it into Formula 1. And then it was like Helmut Marko just like said, you got potential, let's put him in a Toro Rosso seat. So then in that first year driving for the Red Bull Academy, he gets moved up to Red Bull, which is pretty phenomenal as a stat. Max Verstappen made that same move, not in his first season, though. It was like his second or third. He got switched up to Red Bull. He did win his first race in a Red Bull, but it's really hard to compare anyone to Max Verstappen at that point. So, but after that, he took a year off basically to become Red Bull's reserve driver, working in the simulator. And the next year, he got a spot in Williams where he still drives. He made a couple great points positions last season. And look, just this last Sunday, he already made points in the first race at Bahrain. I got a fun fact for you. Alex Albon has a Chipotle celebrity card, which means it's like a black card, gold card, whatever you want to call it. Free Chipotle for life. What I would do to get a Chipotle celebrity card. I guess I just got to be a celebrity. So, all right. That was Alex Albon. And now let's throw it over to you, Jeff. Who are we talking about on the other side of the garage?
We are talking about Logan Sargent, the first American. Well, you said America and I said American at the same time, and it really threw me off. The first American to drive F1 since Alexander Rossi in 2016, I believe, 2015.
Yeah. Dude was only racing for like 5 races, though.
Yeah,
so like,
and it was very subpar, not very good races for him. So he's also officially the first full-time racer since Scott Speed, I believe, in 2006. So it's been a hot minute.
It's been a while. Yeah.
So we will start with Logan's just early beginnings. Similar to Albon, he started karting in Florida in 2008 when he was 8 as well. He was born, I believe, January 31st, 1999. So New Year's baby, I guess, almost. And he would go on in 2008 to finish his regional championship in 3rd. After that, after some success, he moved to Europe from 2008 to 2016. So he had a good stint in Europe. In 2015, he won the CIK FIA World Championship, and in doing so, he became the first American to win an FIA karting championship since 1978, which is pretty impressive for a kid.
Jeez.
Yeah. Then he would go on in 2016 to win the WSK Championship. The OK division. Keep in mind, listeners and viewers, there's a lot of divisions. There's a lot of stuff that I'm really not even sure of. So even like the OK division, there are other divisions within that division. There's a lot going on. But bear with me. So I'll do my fun fact right now. That WSK Euro Series is the same Euro Series that Max Verstappen won, that Charles Leclerc won, and that Lando Norris participated in. So he was
that he didn't win. That's what you're saying.
I'm just saying
Lando,
what I'm
at
saying.
least, yeah.
So he's with some tough competition in the history of that Euro Series. So he deservedly so belonged, I guess, in that division. So we go on to 2016, where he began his single-seat driving career in F4. He debuted with Team Motopark, where he would go on to podium 15 of the 18 races. It's pretty impressive for his rookie year and F4.
It's like
89%.
Yeah.
So
podium rate right there.
He would go on to join Team Carlin in 2017 with McLaren second driver Oscar Piastri. He would also go on to win 2 races that season. Later on, 2018, he left the FIA grid to spend a single season with Formula Renault Euro Cup, where he had a little bit of success before coming to F3. It's not very important per se, but it's part of his journey.
Experience. Yeah.
Yeah. So we move on to F3. In 2019, he joined the division, and he would go on to spend 3 seasons there. Most notably, though, was his last season, 2021, where he switched to Cheru, I believe, racing team, where he did something that was pretty much unheard of and extremely unlikely, especially for an American driver. He would go on to help Charu's racing team, who was widely known as one of the worst teams. He would help them gain 102 points throughout the season. He finished the season 7th place out of 35 drivers. The team finished 5th out of 10th. And he won the team's very first ever F3 race in Sochi, the Motor Dome, I believe it's called. So he took what is essentially an F Team 3 that was Williams and turned it kind of around
halfway
by
up the
himself.
grid. Yeah, seriously.
Moving on to his F2 career, he made his debut in the penultimate round in the 2021 season with HWA Race Lab, but that race did not go so well. So his one race that season to try it out for a trial, he ended up in 16th place. But then he would sign on with Team Carlin, who, as we learned earlier, he had a relationship with from his F3 days. He would go on to become the first American to ever win an F2 race, and he did so at Silverstone. Pretty cool.
That's right.
He would also go on to win the Austrian Grand Prix on a technicality. I believe the first two positional racers were DQ'd, or they had enough points or penalties where he won. He ended up winning that one, and he finished.
A win's a win, right?
Yeah,
yeah.
Vin Diesel would say that. Yeah. And he went on to finish the season in 4th place with a Rookie of the Year accolade. So, yeah, naturally he would be called up to F1, right? But there's the weird thing with him being called to F1 is that he was kind of already told by Williams, who he was an academy driver for at the time, that he would be signed, but he did not have his super license points yet. So depending on his, I believe his final race, he had to finish 5th or above without any penalties to get the super license points. And he ended up doing it. So officially in November of last year, he was signed to Williams, replacing the GOAT, Nicholas Latifi, and joining Albon. So we obviously haven't seen a lot of him in F1, so we don't know his particular, his ceiling for talent, but he's an aggressive driver. We saw him do rather well in Bahrain, his first F1 race.
You see that opening lap? That was awesome, man. Check out his onboard. He has like 5 passes done. It's like really good.
Out of the rookies, I think he impressed the most. So I think it's going to be an interesting season for him. I just hope that he doesn't do a Mick Schumacher and just get too crazy, too risky, and then have the team principal get all aggro at him, But I have a lot of hope. I think a lot of people do. Williams loves him. They have wanted him since that before that 2021 F3 season where he turned that team around, basically. They can't speak more highly of him. So I'm very excited that we got this a studly American to challenge for,
he's on the
10th
grid,
place.
Seriously though.
Maybe get a point or two. I don't know.
Oh yeah,
it's
going
cool,
for
man.
podiums this year.
I'm happy. It's fun. So we'll see what happens. But those are the drivers for Williams, and we hope that you enjoyed those facts and stories.